Hey everybody, here. My name is Peter Mahar of Biblical Dragons. So you want a bearded dragon or you already have one, now you gotta think about enclosures. If you go to the pet store, you have something like this. Go to the pet store, they've got crazy good deals. You get an aquarium with the bearded dragon for about 200 to 300 bucks. It's terrible. They're clunky, they're ugly, and after you've had your bearded dragon for a little bit, you'll realize these are probably the worst things to have them in. Not because they don't work, but because they're awkward. You have your lights on top every time you need to feed them. You gotta move this, take the lights off. And I found myself not really accessing my dragons as much. You got the really nice fancy aquariums that are like $300 or $400. The doors open up, those are nicer, but you still got these big bulky lights on top. It just looks gross and it's an eyesore. And we really want front-facing opening things, but we don't want aquariums. They're expensive and they're just clunky. If you can't build your own and you do want an aquarium, go on to Craigslist. Many people are giving up their bearded dragons and an aquarium for under 100 bucks. I wish I'd known that when I was first starting out. They are way, way, way cheaper on Craigslist or used. It doesn't need to be brand new. But if you're like me, if you're like me and you want to build your own enclosure that looks sleek and nice, you can build something like this. The enclosure is completely contained, front opening, and it's all under $100 for the entire setup, minus the light bulbs. Light bulbs are more expensive. But we're first going to need a fluorescent light fixture. 24 inches is what I'm using for this one. This is going to be for our heat source. Okay, you got two different light bulb options. If you need to go hotter or cooler, we have that choice built in. I'm going to show you how to strip these cords. They're just everyday extension cords that we will strip and hardwire these two. A power strip for all your stuff. You'll want a timer. I don't have that out here, but I have it with all my other stuff. But a timer for this stuff to go on. Liquid nails. We're going to need this guy. We're going to need power strippers. This to drill holes for vents. These are actually more expensive. You can just drill small holes that won't cost you any extra besides this tool. And that works fine. I don't really do crickets anymore. They're messy. They jump out and dubia roaches can't climb, so it's not an issue to have the vents up higher. Some everyday screws, size 6, 1 1/4 inch sheetrock nails with also a countersink, as well as 2 screw guns. And then this is our windows. This was the most confusing part when I was learning how to do it. People just set up the windows and they never showed how. And if you're like me, everything seems super complicated and everybody says, oh, it's super easy. And it's only super easy once you figured it out. So I'm going to show you how to figure it out so you can say it's super easy. We're going to buy these small little aluminum things from Home Depot. Almost all this is from Home Depot or Amazon, and I'll be posting a link on that as well. But they'll just sit in there with the other piece on top, like so. And we'll get some nice handles, and they'll just slide, open and close. And this will make it way easier to access your bearded dragon. You'll only have one side that is not insulated, this glass side, so it will retain your heat a lot more, which means you don't need as high powered bulbs. It'll save on electricity, it'll look slicker, and if you were to be like me and you get more bearded dragons, you can stack these on top of each other and they look really, really slick. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to just prep and strip our cord stuff. I'm going to get the technical stuff done and then we'll build the box and put it all together, okay? Oh, and needle those pliers. Not sure why these are here, but they always come in handy, right? Box knife. Here we go. Just gonna separate the cords. Run your box knife down, and you're just gonna strip it a little bit, about that much, nothing more. These are great because you can get to the actual size of the wire and then just bite down on it. About there. Oops. And then you've got your wires exposed here, like so. You have a fat side and a small side on all electrical wires. You're going to follow the fat side cord, okay, all the way down. Okay, this is the fat side. This will go to the copper plated part. I'll show you there. Yeah, shoot. Ah! Darn it. That's why you need a pen. I'm gonna go get a pen. Darn it. Hang on. Okay, so starting over. We're finding the fat side. We're following it along. Okay. And the fat side is gonna go with the black. And you may not have black, it might be copper color, in which case we put it to the copper. But no matter what, we're going to test it before we install it into our actual enclosure, because that would be a pain in the butt if it didn't work. So this is the fat side. I'm going to mark it just in case. That's going to go on the black. Okay. Just like so. And you screw these on nice and tight. It's out of the way. So this will fit right in there, out of harm's way. Have a little cover. This will attach to the top of the screen, and this will attach to that right above. And then this allows us to move the lights around in other directions and have two for extra heat if we need it. You may not need it depending on your conditions at your house, if it's hot or colder. So we've wired up this guy. We can put him aside. And put him with the back piece and also our screws. We'll use him later. This one is a little more labor intensive. You can buy a little bit more expensive fluorescent fixtures that are already wired up and ready to go. I have another one in my tank that just sits right in there, and that's really convenient. But for now, I'm just going to wire this up, just like we did for the heat lamps. So it comes with the bulb. This bulb is completely useless because it's just a normal fluorescent. We need a fluorescent that puts out UVB light, which is essentially sun rays.
Rewatching this, I realized I didn't do a whole lot of explanation. All we're doing is taking off all the screws and opening it up to expose the wires. Inside the box, you will find two wires just like the other lighting fixture, and we're going to wire those together.
Now, take our other extension cord, do the exact same thing. So, let's review. The fat one goes with the black cord or the copper colored cord. Oops, there goes that guy. Do I cut him off? Okay.
So all I'm doing here is stripping the wire, cleaning up the other wires, getting rid of the plastic and stuff holding it together, and figuring out which direction I want to put it. This next part, I'm trying to remove, there's a small cut out back plate section that you will run the cord through. Most of them are usually already perforated. This one was not very well perforated, so I was needing to do extra stuff to open up the back.
The size of that bad boy.
Again, normally this whole step is not even required. Normally it's completely perforated and you can use your thumb just to push it open. I've done 3 other enclosures like this and they all have been super easy just to push out. This is the only one that was being very difficult. And after a lot of pain and suffering, I got the thing through.
Okay, there's our hole. That was intense. You know, maybe the reason why people don't show the electrical stuff is because they're not licensed. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to explain that I am just a random citizen that knows very little about electrical work. Do not take anything I say seriously, nor try this at home, I guess. Or if you do, it's at your own risk. So we're getting the fat side again. We're rewiring this fluorescent light, and you can see it's kind of labor intensive, but it's not too bad. However, if you want to go easier, you can buy the pre-wired up that you can just put right in your tank. Put some screws in it, call it a day. If you want to do that, that is totally fine. So, this wire stripper, by the way, is super helpful because you can find the size of the cord, put the cord right in one of those notches, clamp down as tight as you can, and just pull. And what it does is it takes off that plastic part on your cord, and then you can wire your wires together a lot easier.
Again, guys, I really hope this isn't way too complicated. This isn't scaring you. If you can plug in an outlet in the wall, that's essentially what we're doing. We're just exposing the wires and connecting two wires together, and that's kind of our plug into the wall scenario. Once you do this and you close it up, this is the hardest part. The rest is super easy. And again, if this is too scary or too daunting, you can just buy pre-wired ones, but they're usually a little bit more expensive in the $30 to even $60 range. This is only like 16 bucks.
Something we can talk about is for reptile enclosures. There's what's called the T8 bulb and the T5 bulb. In short, all the T and the number is referring to is the diameter of the bulb. Okay, so T5 is smaller, a T8 is like thicker, wider. T8s are a little bit older in terms of design. T5s are much newer. Oh, come on, buddy. The T5 runs quite a bit hotter, which can be good for creating natural heat for your enclosure. That's something to think about. Our particular enclosure we're making, if you do a T5 with the size, you might not be able to get the same basking temperature that you need because the temperature of the tank will just rise too high. Also, because we're only doing an 18-inch high tank or enclosure, T5 is too much UVB being put out. So a T8 is something that can be closer to the dragon and needs to be closer to the dragon than a T5. The other downside with the T5, or the T8 rather, is that you need to replace them every 6 months. Their lifespans do not last as long as the T5. Both seem to work okay. So our lights are done. We can put these away. The light bulb, again, we'll leave the cover off. If you have the cover, it'll actually restrict UVB. So we're going to leave the cover off and it'll go in the enclosure just like so. And there's some screws. We screw it to the ceiling. Bing, bang, boom. Okay. One thing I didn't show you is the actual melamine we're using for the enclosure. Melamine is super cheap. The downsides is it's super heavy. It's really easy to clean though. It's basically just particle board that's been fused together. Really easy to clean these surfaces, which is great for bearded dragons. As long as you seal the corners and the bases, it's pretty much waterproof if a dish were to spill. If you're able to find PVC board from Lowe's or Home Depot, and you're able to spend a little bit more money, definitely get that. It would last almost forever, and it would be way lighter and actually stronger too. This stuff works good though. It's about $26 a board, and one whole board with my measurements will be able to make a 46 by 24 by 18 enclosure, which is well bigger than you'll ever need for a bearded dragon. Yeah, so that's awesome. So we're going to have a number 6 countersink drill bit. Number 6 again refers to the diameter of the size. then we're going to have number 6 screws. So we'll countersink, drill, screw through. Your bottom piece, 2 side pieces that will go like this. And it needs to go on the inside because these are actually reinforcing the base. It's way easier with 2 people, but you're going to have, this will go on the inside. We're going to have a back piece that's going to go right there inside this. And that's going to have the top piece set on top, and that's where we're going to have our doors in front. Just like that. So if you're by yourself though, there is a hack. Just like this. Okay. So first just set on its side because it'll stay upright more. I want it to be flush though, so I'm going to put a piece of cardboard underneath. So our countersink's going in.
So another thing I just did, I did not talk about, is doing a thin layer of Loctite glue on just the bottom pieces. It's not necessary, but I think it would make it overall a lot more stronger of a structure. So just the bottom pieces, a thin layer of Loctite glue, and that should do it.
Isn't that nice? You just play around in it. Okay, so, alright, the last very important piece is the back. And as you see, the sides and the back are all on this one piece. So when the top goes on, and if you were to stack it, all the pressure goes between these, which makes it a lot more stable than having to put these on the side and the screws getting bent down and such. So, here we go.
So all I'm doing is making sure it's flush, screwing in a screw in the top pocket and then the bottom, and then 2 more in the center, and the same thing on the other side. So each side should really just have 4 screws in it, and then we'll be ready for the top layer.
Okay, so now we're going to put on the tracks for our glass windows, but in our case we're using plexiglass. So
all I'm doing here is Home Depot cut all my pieces for me. I'm just double checking, making sure it's going to fit. If not, you'll need to take a chop saw and hack it to size, and then apply a thin layer of glue. I'm using Gorilla Glue. Other glue would work probably better. Gorilla Glue is usually very messy if you're not careful. But then you'll just put the aluminum piece on top. Make sure it's very flush, and then you're going to use tape or clamps to keep it in place. And you'll do this to the top and bottom piece, and you'll need to let those sit and cure for at least 12 to 24 hours. If you're smart, you'll do that the very first thing, and then let those sit as you're finishing up the rest of the stuff.
And then put them off to the side to cure. To cure while you're doing other stuff. And then when we get to this point, once you've built your sides and your back piece, before we place the top, we're going to measure out where we want the lights. Okay. Get them in position about wherever we want them. And then figure out where we're going to have to hide the cords. And then we're going to drill a little half crescent moon in the back of our back plate. If that makes sense. So I'll just take a drill like this and drill out just the top crescent so the cords can rest in it and come out the back. And I was playing around with this a little bit in terms of where I wanted to put this light. This is the front of the box, and these lights, I think if I put it in the center, it would allow us to do one guy, pointing towards that corner, and then another guy pointing towards this corner. And the purpose of that is it warms up this corner, but it also creates a little bit of radiating heat here to kind of somewhat warm up this side, but still keeping us in a gradient of 80 degrees or so. I've had it over here before, and it works good, except this side stays about 70. It needs to be about 80 over here. So this would help with that, as well as if we ever had baby dragons, we could do this on either side, put a divider down the middle, and just for a little bit, while they're really little, you could divide up clutches if you needed, as kind of a temporary fix. So it gives us more options to have this in the center. And I think it'll do what we need it to do, like so. Okay. A little side tip, if you do the double, I drilled a hole right here to put my cords through for that. That way they're not sticking out on anything. This is what I mean by the crescent. Instead of going down directly behind it, I'm going to kind of have it part way up. It will chip more, but because it's so high, you won't see it as much. Other benefit, this is kind of huge. I pre-drilled all my holes that I'm going to be using for vents outside ahead of time, so it reduces dust and reduces having to clean. So we're going to dust all this out, get all this stuff out while I can, and it's easy. This is just water. You see the crescent, because it's open, when I flip it over, the cords are just going to be able to set right in and go straight out. And so it's the minimalist hole for our cords. I also don't do vents in the back because the first time I did that, it's kind of vanity, but I don't get very good pictures of my dragons. So this is like a nice white backdrop for pictures. I have vents in the front, a few in the bottom, so it gets some bottom air and creates circulation. It goes out the tops there. Because we've done all of our holes, now we can seal it while it's open. This makes it easier. You don't need to worry about caulking the top corners because you won't see those, but this just helps it be more seamless. And also, if water or cleaner ever were to spill, these cracks are not exposed, because if melamine gets wet, it would warp. It'd be very bad. Works best if you just get a pair of gloves. Take your finger down. And you'll want to do this a good 48 hours before you put your bearded dragon inside, so everything has time to cure and dry. I would honestly wait even longer for this stuff, just so those fumes don't get your dragon. Just gonna hold it like this, a little bit further away from the front. Going very, very lightly in. If you do enough, it'll be fine. And these screws are incredibly tiny, so they wouldn't even go through that. Gives us some space just in case. Whatever. The cool thing too with these guys is if, for whatever reason or for your needs, the placement of this light doesn't work, I put very minimal screws on top so we can unscrew it and then remove it if we need. And the holes are so small you could fill it with, but you wouldn't really need to fill it with anything because you're not going to really see the top.
This last part, I'm just screwing in the light fixtures, making sure they're solidly attached to the top, making sure they're center, and then I'm going to staple down the cords to keep them out of sight, and then wrap them around through that little crescent hole we made. And then we're done.
Snug as a bug. If you wanted two, you could do a ceramic heater and a light bulb, but I'm going to do a 50 watt and a 75 watt. That works for my basement because it's so cold. It creates a really hot basking area and then a colder basking area here. And then this side still stays in the 80-degree gradient, which is what we want. Yeah. And the reason why we do this is because now the inside is pretty clean for when we put up our track. We don't want to nail this down yet. So going back to some tips, I pre-drilled everything first. And on this bottom strip, the reason I'm doing vents at the bottom this time is I want fresh air to be able to come in, and then the heat will rise up and go out those top vents. Creates more circulation. Heat rises, and so if you only have vents on the top, all the air will rise and it'll create like a stagnant fog down below. I want a little bit more circulation. So These guys have just glued on screen at the back, and that's just with a hot glue gun. So animals and critters can't get out, which is what we want. So glue these racks on first, put them aside, build the whole box, clean it out, caulk the edges, and then we're going to start putting these guys in, our tracks. Since I'm only doing 2 screws on the ends, I'm going to just glue a small strip at the bottom, just in case. I'm going to put 1 screw underneath, right there. Here's our acrylic. I might accidentally say glass a couple times, but this is acrylic. That prevents cracking, all that good stuff. I used to work in a cabinet shop, and I used to, for a few days, work in the acrylic section. All day, one day. My job was to take this film off. And you start to get good tricks at it, but this guy is not coming off. Here we go. Whew. Embarrassing. Okay. Get your nail on it. There it is. That was exciting stuff, huh? So, it's just as clear as glass. One thing you want to do is partially sand at an angle the parts that will be rubbing against each other. This prevents a little bit more of creating streaks or scraping from it. And then you're going to place this guy on top. So have your screw guns ready. If someone else is with you, it's way easier, but if you're by yourself, we have not screwed in the lid yet. Okay, lid is still open. Now we're going to take our second piece, slide it on top of this guy. Okay, and then bring her in. Come on. Now, it's completely resting on the glass currently, or plexiglass, and there's this much of a gap. We want to go all the way to the top, and that still is okay. The reason is because as we put more tanks on it and stuff, it will press down, and if it's pressing down too much, this won't move. See? It's not moving. So we want to go all the way up to give it some space, and then you'll be able to move the glass, okay? So this is very important. We get it as high up as possible. You can see it pretty much stays by itself, which is helpful. We're going to pull up, get it as flush to the front as possible. See that? We got ourselves Enclosure. Pretty much done, guys. Look at that. How slick is that? Got your lights, your UVB, some bottom vents for up circulation. Looks super slick. We'll put some melamine tape on the front to finish this off. We're pretty much done. Now, we button down the top. So we screwed in the last few back here, and that's pretty much done. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Really hope it's been helpful. Bearded dragon care can be crazy complicated with all the different just advice out there. Again, the pet store sadly is not a very good place for it. Breeders and other people are very good resources to go to if you have any questions. Feel free to message me. Again, Biblical Dragons is my Instagram and Facebook. If you like this and it was helpful, please like it. Please click that you know the buttons, all those good buttons. Yeah. Follow us along on Instagram and Facebook for more bearded dragon tips and care. Our goal is to make your life easier with caring for these awesome dudes. They can be complicated, but there's some sweet ways we can do to take care of them better. Ciao, ciao, and have a good day.